and Security Solutions Company. And he has done his post-graduation in information technology from Queensland University from Australia. And his healthcare experience comes from being part of founding team of dentists, and which is focused on providing telehealth services by capturing people vitals. So over to you, Mr. Ravi Chennupati, sir. So maybe you could briefly describe Mr. Venu, sir, and take over the session.
Ravi, I'm sorry, I didn't know that Venu is also Chennupati. That's why you asked. Okay.
No, this is not a family event.
Yes, and we met on Thai family, and in that sense, we are the entire Thai family.
Yeah, big family. Yeah.
Excellent. So, good evening, all. I'm happy to be the moderating today's session to live up to the TNT session that's been conceptualized. So Thursday night talk. So I try to bring whatever the best I can from Venu. He's a very experienced entrepreneur in the field of health tech space. So I would say Venu is a serial entrepreneur with significant role in who plays a significant role in primary healthcare space in India. Currently, he's the founder of Pegasi Health Systems, which runs the largest telehealth platforms that has served 17 million health consultations for various state governments through different health operators. So he has a huge experience with EMRI, HMRI, FDHS, so I would want him to go over his journey a little bit instead of me reading the entire slides here. So I would want Venu to, stress upon certain interesting areas which is connected to our today's topic, which is telehealth. So we would all like to see telehealth scaling up with COVID and all. We have some improvements that are happening in telehealth. So he's been in telehealth, telemedicine, and primary healthcare clinics, all these areas for almost more than a decade. So over a couple of decades actually. So I would want Venu to talk about his journey in the last couple of decades. Venu, all over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Ravi. Thank you for the nice slide and nice introduction. And I think thank you all for coming and participating in this event. Thank you for taking the time. Actually, my journey is basically, like most of us, we have gone to US, we have worked there, and then I've been to US, and then I did some masters in a couple of universities. And then I was in the finance field working in the NASDAQ stock market, and then later in the World Bank, Washington, DC. Primarily, I was a finance guy. I was monitoring budgets and looking after whether the countries have spent money as per the economic plans we have built in the bank and things like that. So, so basically in search of meaningful work and wanted to move back to India. I moved back to India in 2008 when I had an offer in Gates Foundation to head the AIDS project under Ashok Alexander. But then I took up the job in Hyderabad because it was easy for me, and then my parents and my in-laws were also at this place. So at that time, I think I just joined Satyam or the HMRI and EMRI wings of their services, where I was heading the business development. And then I think sooner or later, I think after 4 or 5 months, Raju wrote his letter, and I think you all know the saga after that. So I think I was a forced entrepreneur by that, because after Raju left, nobody was willing to give software to EMRI and HMRI, and we developed the software initially, and then started giving software to various services in terms of running ambulances or doctor on call or the mobile health services and things like that. So the journey started in 2008 in India in healthcare, where we were given a large canvas and we were asked to solve problems of taking healthcare to the last mile, last yard, and last inch. And I think initially as a technology company, I think for every technologist here, I think if you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail kind of scenario, where I think he strongly believed initially that the technology would solve all the problems of healthcare and then everything will fall into the place. But invariably, there was a lot of resistance to adaptation of technology. And then there were some areas where we had a groundbreaking experiences in terms of taking technology to the last mile. In terms of one of the services which we developed were basically initially in 2008 we did that for the entire state of Andhra Pradesh, where we said we launched something called a doctor on call, where we would actually proliferate this kind of service in villages, and anybody who calls 104 would get a doctor advice for free. So this, we went to villages, we did a lot of burrakathas, well, so many social events which we did, so that people do call, because most of the people in villages are beyond 10 kilometers of any doctor, and the nearest person or a health worker whom they have is the local RMP whom they trust a lot. So how do you change this scenario and deliver healthcare services to them? So initially what we did is we launched this service, but we used technology where we said we'll use a triaging system where 80% of the calls were addressed by a paramedic and only 20% were addressed by doctors. Because the doctor's time is limited, and as you all know, I think that there are limited doctors in India. I think the world WHO says 1:1,000, but currently we have 1:1 lakh. I think they have changed the numbers, adding all the Ayurvedic and the homeo doctors. I think we are somewhere close to 1:40,000 or something like that. But still, it's a low number. So we didn't expect a big applause or the kind of response we received for the service was huge, where we used to get 50,000 calls per day on 104 service. And we actually did everything. I mean, we got the best management practices. We would pick up the call in 3 or 4 rings. We would make sure that the advice is standardized, because the paramedic has to give the same advice irrespective of how many times a person is calling. For example, a person is saying, I'm having stomach ache or I'm having fever. No matter how many times you call, that guy would give the same kind of advice, because advice has been standardized. And then we would optimize our algorithms based on the feedback we used to receive. So also we would properly utilize the doctor's time, in terms of utilizing the doctor's time effectively and efficiently. The doctor, if the paramedic is not able to address, then it would go to a doctor. So in that context, I think we solved some problems in terms of healthcare. We would take care of minor ailments. We would take care of advice on communicable and non-communicable diseases, and a lot of things. I think there initial, and I think the service also grew up where we would advise people with mental health, and then also we added a healthcare directory. We would advise them. Somebody says go to a urologist, we would tell them what urology means.
Venu
Sorry,
sir,
Mike.
we actually lost you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Just a second. I'm sorry to. I think it's my phone ringing. I'll just turn it off. I'll just put it again. Okay. Sorry about that. So those are the initial starting steps. And then along with that, we started something called fixed day health services. Also, I think there were 2 aspects to this. One was the election was coming near, where Rajshekar Reddy garu said, we need to launch this quickly. The fixed day health services was something where we would just go to a village, remote village, on a fixed day of every month. And then we would do basic diagnostics and give them medicines for their chronic ailments kind of thing. And then sometimes we would use telemedicine to connect to a doctor or a specialist kind of scenario. So that is another service where we almost covered 4 crore population with 450 vans. And on a fixed day of that particular day, the van would go to a village. If it goes on May 1st, it will go on June 1st. So people will remember that the health van will come every month on a particular date kind of thing. The other services were basically taking over primary healthcare clinics, and then since specialists don't want to go to villages, we would augment them with telemedicine service, where a GP would sit in the local primary healthcare center, and then specialists would come from Hyderabad, kind of a scenario. So these are various kind of things which we have done in a large canvas, and then we took these services to other states. I think in the last 15 years, we have done these services in almost 12 to 13 states, with different flavors. Like in Maharashtra, the calls would come from ASHA workers. ASHA workers are basically people who live in that village. They're called the daughter-in-laws of the village, kind of thing, and they would advise the people. So there were different flavors of the same idea, but the idea went well across India, because healthcare as such, I'm sure, I think there are very less doctors in villages working, or in tier 2 or tier 3 towns working, and whoever works is like super busy kind of thing. So that's the thing about healthcare. That's where my journey in healthcare started. Also, I think one of the things Ravi wanted to talk about my journey was, yes, I moved back in 2008. I also have a Harvard degree in public health. I'm a trained epidemiologist. So I think in the last 1 or 2 years, because of the COVID scenario, I was also giving some forecasting models to Maharashtra and other governments, where they wanted to predict when will the COVID end. So we were working as a team, and then I would use my Harvard network and all to figure out when when the cases would peak, when it would come down, and things like that. So the other area where I was focusing and being active in that space. So more or less, I think that has been my this thing. And then in the meanwhile, we also this was purely healthcare technology company called Zolt, which we started in 2009, and later we started another company where we said, how about delivering pure healthcare services to rural areas, clean quality services to rural areas, which would call mandals or taluks. In that context, we set up around 50 primary healthcare clinics, and we would charge the customer around 50 to 60 rupees, because all the services by the government are free, right? So this was another company we set up as it was called Ashwas Clinics. So we set this up in Karnataka, Andhra, and Telangana, and we would call a specialist on a weekend, especially on Saturdays and Sundays, on either through telemedicine or directly. So we would have different specialists, like orthopedic specialists or endocrinologists or different kind of specialists going to the clinic or talking over the telemedicine, and we would schedule these patients for a weekend service. So that company, which we started in 2012, we exited in 2015, where we actually set up around 55 of these centers, and then we exited because these primary healthcare centers became feeders for the local hospitals. So in Vizag, Seven Hills Hospital, or in Kurnool, Balaji Hospital, or different hospitals took over our clinics in 2015 and 16. The other company which I started after that was basically into healthcare operations, where we actually wanted to deliver healthcare services to local areas in terms of doing healthcare operations for the government. So we actually took over some of the area hospitals and district hospitals in Uttar Pradesh, as well as the ambulance network, which was around 2,000 vans. So that period was very short, where we started that company in 2016, and I exited that company in 2018 after it reached a critical threshold of doing around 500 to 600 crores turnover. That was my second exit in the healthcare space, and I still continue to have my healthcare IT services. Along with solving these kind of problems, there were other problems which we tried to solve. Like we started the National AIDS Foundation call center, not the foundation, sorry, where we would get calls from all over India because people AIDS was basically a stigma for people to talk about. So they would, because it is a phone, they wouldn't have any issues talking about their issues over the phone. So we had a number 1056 where people would just call from anywhere in India, and then we set up a 75-seater with doctors and health workers who would just address these people's issues.
Are we able to hear, or is it only my?
Hello? Hello?
Is it my side?
Sir, sorry. No, sir. We
Vamsi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, sir.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So broadly, that has been my journey, and I think the telehealth market has just opened up in the last 1 or 2 years, mainly because of COVID, in terms of bringing it up because of the need that doctor is not able to see a patient directly. So I think the telemedicine market has been picking up, and there are a lot of players right now. Practo, 1mg. There are a lot of market players who have come in and with big venture capital investments of around, I would say 1mg is around 172 million, or Pharmacare around 320, or Practo around 400 million investments. So there is a good opportunity in telehealth, and there is the market, I think, will improve in future. I think broadly that's where I would stop, Ravi, and then you can take over.
Okay, great. I mean, definitely I appreciate you sharing your journey in related to this topic. So coming back to the topic, I would like to bring focus onto the topic here, which is scaling up. We're talking about telehealth for more than a decade now, and a lot of young entrepreneurs are, jumping onto the bandwagon of telemedicine, telehealth, health-related platforms, connecting doctors, connecting patients to doctors. So much is happening in this area. But we, even Apollo, I mean, can you talk about Apollo? I mean, are they into telehealth? I mean, I know you're involved a bit into that area as well. Can you take a couple of big players and we talk about, if it is nothing confidential or anything, you can talk generally.
Yeah, sure. I think
what are the big guys doing?
Yeah, it's a very interesting area because I mean, I worked with Apollo. Apollo and we worked together, and we ran the 167 urban primary healthcare centers in Andhra. Working with Apollo has been a very good experience. Apollo is actually the first telemedicine operator in India, to be very honest. And there was Dr. Ganesh who started it in Apollo. And ISRO was very vital because at that point of time, there was a VSAT technology. So we can just put a dish anywhere and you could get the internet connectivity or the video conferencing services, which you need for telemedicine. So they started this in 2008 and 2009. And Apollo's journey has been, initially, the first telemedicine center they set it up is using Chennai to Chittoor. Chittoor is basically because of Dr. Pratap Reddy Garu's village, where he was born and brought up. So he set up his first telemedicine center in his village. And later, Apollo in next 2 years, they have set up around 100 to 150. I actually don't know the true number, but somewhere very close to the. They set up 150 telemedicine centers all around India. And they were expecting around 40 to 50 OPs per day in the telemedicine centers because they set up a good amount of doctors also for that. I think 3 years down the lane, they reduced it to around 30 to 35. And then one of the biggest learnings Apollo had is most of the centers which they set up in Northeast were working, the mountain and terraneous area where there are no doctors or RMPs to help them. And there is no phone network also, right? At that point of time, mountain and hilly areas didn't have good cell phone networks. So all those areas had a very good success in terms of telemedicine centers. But the rest of the centers, all wherever they set up in cities or in mid towns, have failed miserably because invariably, I think, like I think I was discussing with you in the last meeting which we had. One of the biggest insights in health is like health is like any other industry, but you need to have that trust to get into that industry. So, for example, I was giving you an example saying that let's say you set up a Walmart with quality services and quality products. People will just go the next day and buy things. But if you do the same thing in health, people will not go because it's a matter of trust. I mean, if I have a stomach ache, I would just call you, Ravi, and say, can you tell me the best doctor for stomach pain? And then I would go to that doctor, irrespective of whatever the best infrastructure you have in the world. So there is some amount of trust that needs to be generated in health. So that I think all entrepreneurs or the budding entrepreneurs need to take that into consideration, that there are some amount of gestation periods for the healthcare market to evolve or their idea to evolve into a fertile business making money. I think that is one of the things which I think Apollo learned it the very hard way, and I think Apollo also makes a lot of money, so I guess they don't really care. But the other successful person was basically Narayana Hrudayalaya, where they have done very good stuff. They have set up some of the telecardiology centers where they could diagnose people whom they believe would have a heart attack in near future, and then call those patients back to their hospitals. So it was basically like a triaging mechanism where they would use this service to identify people who are prone to heart diseases and then bring them to the hospitals. So that is the second level. So if you broadly, if you look at the telemedicine area, I mean, see, basically there is a consultation, and then there is a lab diagnostics, and then there is a pharmacy, right? So in this consultation, you can have a GP or a specialist. So basically, GP is a general physician who would just look at your chronic diseases and chronic ailments. If you go for a specialist, like lot of specializations are coming up in telehealth, in like teleradiology, teleoncology, or so. So how do you deal with specialists without the equipment? So most of the time, these specialists are doing triaging. Even when you say teleoncology, they would just do a triaging system whether this person would need chemo this month or next month, and then based on that they would call them to the hospital instead of calling them to the hospital direct. Same thing with telecardiology or any other specialization where technology is playing a role in terms of doing triaging. So the other part is diagnostics and pharmacy. So diagnostics, what's happening is a lot of companies which are evolving into home care, where they would come to your place and do a lot of diagnostics. And okay, for a few things you might have to go to a big diagnostic center like the MRI or things like that. So there are two aspects in diagnostics. One is basically what the doctor is looking at your diagnosis and giving you a prognosis. The other one is after the prognosis, if he wants to monitor you. So what are the different kind of diagnostic tools and methods which you have, which he has? So by the time the next time you come, so he has that information ready that your heart has been beating like this, or you have been exercising like this, or your weight has been increasing like this. There are so many parameters which he can just look at, and there is a report which summarizes. I think what you guys are doing is also on the heart side, right, where you're just monitoring the heart thing, and it's like a continuous monitoring of the heart. So you will also hear a lot of things, and then the doctor gets to take a decision on that, right? So those kind of things. The other part is basically, so there are different area, I mean, purely pharmacy. So if you talk about pharmacy, what's happening in pharmacy is, I guess a lot of players who come into the pharmacy area. One is the regulation is not that concrete, because in telemedicine there are recent guidelines which have come which say that there are only certain OTC products which you can prescribe, and you cannot do a Schedule H or other kind of drugs you cannot prescribe on telemedicine. So there are big players that have come into pharma, basically optimizing the supply chain. You buy directly from a big pharma company, and then you subsidize it and you try to give it to the customer. Those kind of things like 1mg and all, but sooner or later, I think they have realized that this kind of business is not self-sustaining. So they've moved into telemedicine. So 1mg is also doing telemedicine consultations right now, along with Practo. Practo initially came as EHR software, which would do scheduling and connecting patients. It was initially like a Google search, and then they would do scheduling. Slowly, now Practo, I think, has evolved into a player which does pure telemedicine consultations because of the COVID scenario. And telemedicine consultations have dramatically increased in Practo in the last 6 months. And I think people are just moving into this space because of the need that has arisen because of COVID-19. But after that, how it will be is we have to see. So that's another aspect, I would say, in the telemedicine area. So.
Look, I mean, one thing we realize in our new startup, Vigo Care, we take people's vitals and especially the heart-related vitals, and we predict arrhythmias. So so during that process, so the person, the patient, or you call any person, even without being a patient, can take this test and put on the equipment and send the data to the cloud. Our AI analyzes it, and we are able to predict the several heart ailments, including arrhythmias and all. So for that, we are trying to deal with 3 elements here. So one is the doctor is part of it, the patient is part of it, and the technology is part of it. So for the tele health and these things to work, all these 3 things have to fall in place. So you beautifully talked about the patient sides of it, which is if you have a stomach ache, you're going to call me to suggest you a reference. So that's how most of the people in India do it. So that's the people side of it. So that is something that the entrepreneurs have to remember and overcome and build into their solutions while they're doing it, right? And the second and the most complex thing is the doctor. Doctor, I would say, is a hospital or doctor. I tie them both to the same pin. So the doctor is the most complex part again, right? I mean, we know that. So, and technology will come later. Most of us are technology guys, and we understand the issues with technologies later. So what do you think is the doctor related challenges in these 3 areas? So I live in these things pretty much on a weekly basis, trying to solve all these 3 things and balance it out. So from your experience, of being in there for 10, 12 years, so for scaling up, all 3 have to fall in place. I completely agree with you.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Doctor, patient, and technology. All 3 has to be beautifully married together, and that's when the telehealth will fall into place. So doctor side challenges, what do you say?
Yeah, I can talk about my experiences. I hope there are not many doctors in this group. Don't want to alienate them. But I think doctors, the biggest challenge with doctors is adapting towards technology. And I've seen this in the last 12 years, right from the day when we started the doctor on call centers. So what happened is we hired a lot of retired doctors. If you need 250 doctors to be pulled out of the system and put it in a call center, I think the best guys were the retired guys whom we can think of. But the problems were adaptation of technology. How do you, 40% of them were actually above retired guys, and the rest we had other people. But how do you adapt to technology? So, and then see, everything it's like basically sitting in a call center, right? So of course, we gave them big desks and things like that, but still they had a challenge that they would always feel they were sitting in a call center kind of scenario. So we separated them out into a new floor and with separate cabins, glass cabins and all those things. But the biggest challenge is, I mean, initially we would have somebody type for them. That, I mean, that's a very strange thing, but they would say, I don't want to type. So we would put somebody who would just type for them whatever they're talking over the phone or the prognosis. Because what happens is somebody is having fever, they would get an SMS in a remote village in Telugu saying that take Dolo 650 mg. We would actually give them the 650 mg prescription kind of thing. So, and then that prescription has to be typed. So we would have somebody sit there and type for the doctor. That's the first thing. In the clinics also, what happened is the doctor refused to use the technology in terms of using the EHRs. So he would just say, I would just write it on the, the pads, whatever he writes the medicines, right? So what we did is we put a carbon paper under that, and we would get all these books to Hyderabad and then upload those information. All you had to do is write the patient ID and the name so that we would not miss it, and then whatever medicine he's prescribing on the paper. I think that was the best idea because there was no other way we could.
Assisting them with their administrative activities so that you can bring the best out of what they can do best, which is healthcare, right? So that's so you. I mean, 10 years ago and now, I mean, do you see doctors adapting to technology?
Yeah, there is a huge
forward?
change. Yeah, there is a huge change. See, the thing is, that's why the adaptability is slow, but they are adapting. There is no doubt that they are adapting. I'm also sure. I think doctors also adapt a lot of technology in terms of surgeries and all. They a lot of these medical devices guys bring a lot of new products which come into the market, and these doctors learn. It's not like they don't want to learn, but for them, some are menial work, which they don't want to do it.
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree. About 6-7 years ago when we started Dinties, when I, from the technology point of view, telling my partners that every doctor has to log in when they come in and they have to put a thumb impression and it automatically logs in. We get a time of their ID is there. So whatever they say, they say, and the pictures that they take of the teeth has to be in there. So it was kind of like I was like an alien sitting there asking the doctors to log in and do all this, but it just took a few months and it's beautifully evolved, and every doctor followed it, and the magic happened. So we're all digital very quickly. So I do agree that things are changing as compared to 10 years ago. Definitely we are there to scale up is what I'm thinking. So technology is the other part. I want you to share a few challenges you faced in the technology area 10 years ago, because it's all about connectivity. So connectivity is the key for all this. And I know Tata has started some booths, and established some booths, and they want to do, and they were not too successful because of the connectivity related story. So what's your experience in connectivity technology in this area?
I think the connectivity has dramatically improved. I think 2009 to 12, we were using ISRO satellites. From 11 to 14, we were using data cards and various other. We had these, even in our clinics, these Tata guys set up this huge antennas, phased array antennas, so that they do a line of sight communication. So that would cost us around 2 lakhs per setup and things like that, but it's okay. We would amortize that for the next 5 years kind of thing. But that was little faster. It would give us around 512 to 756 kbps at that time. So there were different things which we tried in terms of technology, in terms of connecting. Biggest challenges we had was in Araku or in the tribal areas, where we were trying to set up these services. I think the farther you go away from cities, we had a huge challenge in building these networks. But I think thanks to the government and to the BSNL, they would help us in terms of like, I mean, it would take us like 3 months or 4 months, but the BSNL would set up something to connect it from Araku Valley to the nearest town, which is Escota down the hill. But I think the government would also, I mean, for us, they helped us a lot in terms of connectivity. But yes, I think currently we will not have that problem. I think I would say 85 to 90% of the villages around India, I was thinking the south is connected, but are connected big time. And they have all these internet connections.
It's only going to get better.
Yeah, it will only get.
And it's only going to get better. It only get better with the 5Gs and Geo expanding a lot and all that stuff. Right? So, and regarding the market opportunity, Venu, what is government looking at? What kind of opportunities are there on the table, and what is the scale of the opportunities that we are talking about? Okay. And
I think to understand that,
example of tenders that are getting released from the government, because end of the day, the government has the biggest chunk of healthcare, rollouts because of all welfare schemes or whatever that we follow from the national to the state, right? So, what opportunities do you see that are out there?
Yeah, it's a very good question, Ravi. I think first we have to understand if you have to serve a market, like you have to understand the market, right? So if you look at the entire landscape of India, there are 10 to 15% who have a insurance, or who are paying taxes, or who are living in the cities and who are actually worried about their health, who are doing a preventive kind of medical checkups and a lot of other things. The other market, which is basically the 80% of the Bharat, basically is served by the government through various government channels. So the biggest challenge there comes is government wants to deliver healthcare services, and they have huge budgets. They have a lot of will to do it. But the thing is, how do we serve? So there are a couple of things. One is, what are the healthcare delivery services which you can provide to these rural areas? So you have to think of multiple services in terms of what are the services we can use, and how can we use technology as a lever to deliver these solutions. So the way the government works is, we do a pilot initially, and then there is an impact or an outcome, and then based on that we scale it. So the scaling is huge. I mean, you do a pilot for 1 or 2 crores, is the government sponsors, and then after 2 years it scales up to around 700 to 800 crore projects. All of these projects which we're doing in different states were almost around 400 to 500 crores, including the ambulances, the fixed data services. The government gives you that scale, that big scale to deliver your products. But the services that need to be delivered are very different from, I wouldn't expect a Practo or 1mg guy to deliver services to rural areas, right? Because they will say economies of cost. What is the cost of delivering, and how much money am I getting? I mean, even if he wants, the VC behind him would say this doesn't work out. So all these new apps, Healthify or Fitness or different kinds of apps, are focused mainly for these 10 to 15% of the population.
That itself is huge. I mean,
yeah, the money is huge, but the rest of the 80% of the population need different kind of services to come up to this level.
Right.
Sorry, Ravi, you were saying something?
Ravi sir, we actually lost you.
Hello.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah,
no,
we can hear you, Ravi. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, so in terms of opportunity, I mean, scale you're talking about, I mean, are you talking about primary health getting connected, and what kind of exactly the government is looking for? I mean, I know you follow these areas, but can you pinpoint to what are those two top areas of challenges that people can solve if you're wanting to identify a couple of areas in telehealth, what would they be?
Okay. So, I mean, I'll just take a step back, Ravi. See, if you look at what is the role a government can play in proliferating telehealth, it's a good question because China had done it in a very big way. Because I mean, if you go to a Chinese person, they just do all these diagnostics or the medicines through WeChat or whatever other thing they have. Because the government regulation, the way they have regulated it is, it said it is okay to do all these things over WhatsApp or whatever functionality. The other thing the government helped is basically on the insurance side. So they said teleconsultation can be reimbursed to doctors. That's another big thing which the government changed, which helped China big time. And the same thing has been followed now in US, where they have given some concessions to HIPAA guidelines and the guidelines on chatting with the doctor, because it has to be a secure chat in US. All those concessions have been given in COVID to proliferate a lot of telemedicine activity. And thereby the telemedicine growth has dramatically increased in US and China. The government in a similar way in India are also coming up with the telemedicine guidelines, where they say telemedicine consultation can be reimbursed. The biggest challenge doctors is can it be reimbursed or not, right? So if it is reimbursed, then everybody will start using telemedicine. And also how do we make sure that they don't misuse it? So there is a big dilemma in what kind of rules can we set it up so that the doctor or the patient doesn't misuse the telemedicine reimbursement which is being given to them. So that is a challenge that the government is grappling with. Whereas a customer is saying, look, I have COVID, I want to see the doctor only on my WhatsApp video or some other video service. I don't want to go to him. And you please reimburse. So once they figure this out, how do you reimburse? I think the market by itself will generate. So what happens is once it becomes big, then you'll have a lot of players who will just go to the doctor and say, look, I have EHR, I have a telemedicine software, you can use mine. So there are a lot of players who would come into the scheduling and video services and ancillary. And somebody would say, look, sir, if you use my software, then I would give you 30% discount in Vijaya Diagnostics or whatever. You know, there's like play among these players. And 1mg might get tied up with these guys. They say, I would deliver medicines for 30 or 40% discount. You are anywhere in India kind of thing. So there's a huge market. And the thing about healthcare is, I think it's by design of nature that 1% of the people are sick all the time. So there's 1% morbidity around the globe. So irrespective of whether you're US or in India, there is 1% of the people are always sick. So there is market. The market is ubiquitous. It is there for everybody to take. It is for us to figure out how do we deliver these services so that both of them are happy.
Right. No, great. I mean, I think we all agree that there is a huge scope. Market is there. There are a lot of challenges, and then that gives scope for a lot of solutions as well.
Correct.
And the technology is evolving. A lot of 10-year ago issues are getting solved from technology. Doctors are adapting, and patients, because of the current COVID-related stuff, it's a little more accelerating as well. I mean, that's what we see in our startup. There's a lot more adaptation now as compared to 1 year ago. So definitely, I think we should agree there is a lot of scaling up that's waiting out there. So
yeah.
So Venu, I would like to open up the floor for questions. Is it okay?
Yeah, sure. I would love to answer a lot of questions, because that way it will be more interactive also, rather than giving me monologue.
Right.
Sir, with your permission, I'm just enabling mic access to anybody. So.
Sure.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, anybody
If
can.
anybody can raise a hand, unmute yourself.
Yeah, hi. Venu, it was good listening to you. I work in the edtech space. Two of the things that I think India needs most are the development or social impact in education and healthcare. Happy to connect. So I wanted to ask you, because you dealt with the government, I often hear how difficult it is to get into the government sector, how difficult it is to get government contracts. How did you crack them?
Well, I think, yeah, I think dealing with government is a little bit tougher. See, the World Bank, I was on the opposite side where I was just challenging them. But here I had to come on the other side, asking them for money. So one is, see, healthcare as such is, in government, there are different ways to deal with it. One is they call it as a green channel. So most of the healthcare projects, they give it in a green channel. When they say it is a green channel in Telangana, for example, that means that your payments will come in 60 days or maximum of 90 days. Those kind of things. So since health is a priority sector, most of the states actually give a priority. The first thing, the initial mechanism to crack is basically if you have a healthcare delivery idea, the way we would do it is we would hire a lot of ex-government employees. So I worked with a lot of directors of health who have worked in the government itself, who know how the system works. And I've been just roaming around with them. So it becomes a little easy for me because I don't know the process in the government. Right? I just have an idea and I just have a service which I want to sell. So hiring government people from that area helps. And the second thing is health is little bit easier compared to an infrastructure or another area where people are willing to explore new ideas and take it forward. So both of these things, I think,
like you said, Venu, a little while ago, approaching the right people, doing the pilot, showing them the value for it, how this solution can scale up to rural areas. And of course, a visionary bureaucrat or a visionary politician will absolutely listen to you, right? And you then make of course, the tendering process will still go on.
Yeah.
But you should be able to convince the visionary politician or a bureaucrat to adopt your solution. Once it is there, the gestation is higher. I mean, that's all. I mean, rather than saying it is extremely difficult to deal with the government, you have to accept the gestation period of the government related. And then once it comes, like when I was saying, it's only 300-400 crore projects, right? Because the scale is very high.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think this initial, it's like a rocket. I think the fuel needed for the rocket to go out of the gravity.
Yeah. Nicely put.
You need to be funded with that fuel.
Yeah, but also I think one of the things which I wanted to tell Ravi is there are a lot of problems. Like I'll tell you, Sri Lanka is a very good example where they have used technology to get rid of their mosquitoes. They have been using drone technology. They have been doing where these mosquitoes are breeding. They went there. I mean, they've done amazing stuff. See, the thing is, what I would advise an entrepreneur also for coming into this field is pick up one field. There are so many fields where you can work in healthcare. And try to solve that problem. For example, how do I solve malaria or dengue cases? For that, how do I eradicate mosquitoes using technology? And there is a solution already there in Sri Lanka. What did those guys do? They used ML, they used AI, they used everything. They studied the patterns of mosquitoes traveling 2 kilometers every day. And they cracked it. It's amazing.
Great. Any next question? I have a question from Rajesh.
Yeah. Okay.
We see telemedicine for primary non-specialty clinic consultation post-COVID has become more acceptable. Do you think this will also move on to more complex secondary and tertiary specialties?
Yeah, good question, Rajesh. I think it is tough to move into secondary, tertiary because, for example, I mean, let's take Rajesh owns a cancer hospital, right? So for him, let's do tele-oncology. There are a lot of tele-oncology that has been done in US, but what they're primarily doing is they're just doing a triaging. Talking to because ultimately for chemotherapy or some other PET scan or
You have to
something else, you have to
come.
go to a hospital. So there's a lot of infra involved in these areas. Like Narayan Hrudaylaya, they have set up a small center and did telecardiology, but ultimately they have to come to the hospital only, right, to do an angioplasty or angiogram or whatever. Um, so I think it's, yes, part of it might become telemedicine, but not the entire part of it, is what my feeling is.
Hmm. Great. Any questions? Is anything to do with patient data and privacy an issue? How are providers addressing it? That's another question I have from the audience.
Yeah, that's a very important question. I think privacy is a myth in India, but when we almost had 4 core electronic health records in 2009-10, and uh, we were just guarding it big time because it's government's data. The biggest challenge there is, I think the government is also coming up. They realize that electronic health records, different hospitals, different state governments, different people are using different EHR. So I think one of the good things which Modi government came across was starting a digital health lockers, which would come in future. So because of this digi health lockers, everybody will have a standardized EHR where they have to port it into our digital health lockers, which will be maintained by the governments. So I think that, but the government still has access to your data. Now everybody has access to your data. Now at least government will have access to your data. Yes, but privacy is a big issue in India in terms of electronic health records. Or you take any of these diagnostic centers, they sell your data. You take any of these hospitals, I wouldn't name it, but small hospital, not listed hospital, but non-listed hospitals sell your data. There's so much issue, and pharma companies just come to us because they saw the scale and they would say, give us this many records, we will give you donation of this much money for this many records. And we would say, go and talk to the government, because the government owns.
Exactly. I get to meet some startups who talk about after I become big, I can sell this data. So the initial plan or the revenue model itself is including the access to data.
Monetizing of data.
So, monetizing from the data itself. Yeah. Okay. So it's 9 o'clock, and unless somebody has questions, and I want to surprise Venu with rapid fire. So I want to keep the tradition going that Bath and team has started before. And, so we'll go for that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, one word answer, right? So one word answer: technology.
Hello, Ravi. Can you repeat that?
Technology.
Oh, technology. Technology is a
One word
lever or
answer.
an enabler in healthcare.
Enabler. Good. Health.
Health is health for all. Democratize it, the health.
Okay. Challenges.
Challenges in health are basically accessibility, availability, and
No, one word. Challenges.
accessibility.
One word.
I think for us is accessibility.
Okay, doctor.
Doctor availability in India.
Patient.
Patient, one word.
One word.
Health-seeking behavior.
Okay, kids.
Kids means love.
Great. future of health tech?
Bright.
Okay, India in 2050.
India in 2050, superpower in health.
Super. We ended this session with the goal to be the superpower by 2050.
Yeah, we should be. Yeah. All right. Thank you guys, everybody, for coming and making it. Hope to see more of these sessions and get to know more of our CM members. If you have any questions or anything about health and telehealth, I think you can just get in touch with me. I would be more than happy to talk.
Thank you so much, Venu, and thank you so much for all the participants taking time during the Thursday night session. Thank you very much, everybody. And feedback is so important. I'm sure the next sessions can get better by your feedback. So to Thai Secretariat.
Thank you, Venu. Thank you, Hari. Thank you, Hari. Good. Thank you, everybody. Good. Thank you, everybody.
Over to you, Pragna and team.
Thank you, Venu, Ravi sir. It was great having you on this Thursday. I'm sure most of us enjoyed it, and it's good learning for us. For the record, I'm closing this call, and we'll come back with the recordings.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, sir.
Good night.
Good night.